if you like the show, if you like the experience, tell your friends about it. It's growing. We're having a good time, and we're learning a lot. And what we're about to learn is something very unique. We're about to learn what it's like to have a relationship with a being that's not a human. And I'm not talking alien. I'm talking a being right here on this planet, a dolphin, and not just any relationship, but a loving sexual relationship. We're going to find that out from Malcolm L. Brenner. So let's bring him right on the show. Here he is. Hello, Malcolm.
Hi.
Hey, thank you for calling in. My last guest ran a little over, and I was going to call you, but you're here now, and I want to thank you for doing that. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much, Robert, for having me on. Just one minor point. It's Malcolm J. Brenner.
My apologies, Malcolm J. Brenner. My apologies,
That's
Malcolm
right.
J. Brenner.
No
okay.
problem.
I was a couple of letters off, but we got it straight, Malcolm J. Brenner. So, Malcolm, you're the author of Wet Goddess. And when did Wet Goddess come out? When did it hit the stands, so to speak?
It hit the stands early last year.
Early last year. And so did you self-publish this book? Or, I mean, I don't know a lot about the publication itself, and we're going to find out more about it. Did you self-publish?
Yeah, I self-published. I founded my own little company here to do that.
Did you try to pitch this to any other publishers before you self-published?
Oh, yeah. I've been down many roads with it. At one point, the dolphin researcher, John C. Lilly, had his agent looking for a publisher for it. Couldn't find any. Publishers can't decide who the audience is,
right.
Who they would market it to, which genre it fits into. You know, if you can't pigeonhole a book these days, how can you market it? And if you can't market it, you can't sell it. So I decided to do it myself because I have just barely adequate skills. And the book seems to be finding its niche.
Well, I got to tell you,
it's selling like hotcakes right now.
I found out about it. I talked about it at the beginning of the show. I found out about it in a really strange place. I'm a football fan, and I was on a forum that talks about the 49ers. It's a 49er forum, and there's a lot of really interesting, eclectic characters on this forum. And we've been posting to each other for years. And there's this one guy who's quirky, and he put a link to your story. And really? I thought, this is really fascinating. And so, of course, because I have my blog and my show, I thought this would be perfect to try to reach out and find you and have you on. And so I discovered you through really unusual means. Although I might have been talking about the Miami Dolphins at the time. I don't know. So let's talk about your experience. Okay, now from what I understand, you were a photographer, and were you working at kind of an aquatic theme park or a rescue situation?
No, I was a student at New College of Florida in Sarasota.
Okay.
When I was asked by a woman who was a writer to take some photos for a book she wanted to write about the dolphins in this little amusement park in a little town called Nokomis. It was about 20 miles south of Sarasota, and I got introduced to the head trainer and his staff, and introduced to all the dolphins, and I got pretty much carte blanche to go and visit the park whenever I wanted to. So,
so that's pretty cool. Yeah, you get to hang out with the dolphins.
Yes, and of course, like everybody else who gets the chance to hang out with dolphins, I wanted to go swimming with dolphins.
Right. So you go into
inevitably cool.
So you go. So you're in the tank or the pool, and so describe the moment where you like. By the way, what was the dolphin's name?
Well, my book is a novel. I should explain that to your listeners, and It's based on my experience. So the name I'm using for her, all the names have been changed, of course, for legal reasons. The name I'm using for her in the novel is Ruby.
Okay, Ruby. So take everybody back in time and talk. Can you talk about your connection with Ruby, and what was that like?
Yeah, she was a very special dolphin. At the time, she was not in a tank or a pool. She was in a sea-level pen that opened directly into the intercoastal waterway down here, which is the next thing to the Gulf of Mexico. And several times a day she went out and she did a show where she would swim alongside of a riverboat and jumped for fish from her trainer, who stood up on the second story of this boat. And it was quite athletic and quite a demanding performance to watch, because everything was moving. The boat was moving. She was moving. So I began to wonder, why does she come back? And
right.
that was the first of many questions I had about the dolphin. How did I get acquainted with her? Well, as I said, like everybody else, I wanted to go swimming with the dolphins, and this was the dolphin that they would let people go swimming with, because she was believed by her trainer to be the most gentle dolphin in the place. Most of the rest of the dolphins that he caught, for some reason, or the ones that he kept there, were pretty rowdy male dolphins. So Ruby, being a female, was thought to be more gentle.
Mm-hmm.
The first time I got in the water with her, it was cold. It was like March or sometime like that, and colder down here than you would think for Florida. But I was wading in the water, and she swam up beside me, and the water was about up to my waist. And I started rubbing her head, just scratching her. Dolphin's skin is constantly flaking off, and they love to have people rub them because it helps get rid of the old skin that's ablating from their surface.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was scratching her head, she slowly swam forward and slowly rolled until I was scratching her belly. And then I was scratching her erogenous zones, and that's where she stopped. And I said to myself, oh, I can't do this. I'll go back to her scratching her head. And she repeated the same process again. That was the first time that I began to feel a little uncomfortable with what she was doing.
Mm-hmm. So she was obviously experiencing pleasure.
It certainly seemed like it to me. I mean, she certainly wasn't in any pain.
Right. So she's kind of flipping over and says, "Hey, big boy, start moving the dead skin away from this area again." And so that was your first time. And did it go any further, or what happens next?
Well, what happened next was a series of gradually escalating moves on her part that were more and more. At first, they were more and more physical, more and more aggressive.
Right.
She would, if I got out in deeper water to try to swim with her, she would rub herself very vigorously against any, bony protrusion of my body. Now, I should explain as neatly as I can for any of your listeners out there that are not familiar with this fact: dolphins are not fish. They are mammals. They are warm-blooded. They breathe air. They suckle their young, and they have all the same genital equipment as we do, just slightly differently arranged for purposes of streamlining. Right. So when a female dolphin rubs what's called her genital slit against you, it's stimulating to her.
Right, absolutely. And now, is it true that dolphins are the only? And you may be able to throw whales in here. I'm not sure, but I was having dinner with somebody, with some friends the other night, and one of the people at dinner said that dolphins are the only animals besides humans that have sex for pleasure. Is that true?
I think all animals are having sex for pleasure. I certainly don't think they're thinking about reproduction when they're having sex.
But they don't necessarily have sex to reproduce, though. Am I right?
I wouldn't make that broad of a generalization about it. I would say mostly sex behavior is for reproduction. Yeah, but the thing about dolphins is, which makes them similar to us, is that they have sex for social reasons.
Right. That's what I was trying to articulate.
Right. The late Dr. Ken Norris, who was a very conservative and well-renowned dolphin researcher, said that dolphins have sex the way human beings shake hands.
Interesting.
It's a social gesture for them.
Interesting. Well, I'm sure that they don't. If you think about it, there's not a lot of convoluted and twisted morality around their experience, right? They don't. Their social codes are probably very different than ours, which are tied into a lot of religious history.
Right. Exactly. I've been reading over blogs and things like that a lot in the past couple of weeks since the story really went viral. And I've seen a lot of people say, well, bestiality is wrong, but nobody is saying why it's wrong. And why it's wrong is because basically we're told it's wrong in the book of Leviticus in the Bible.
Right.
And that piece of archaic Judaic law has become, basically fixated in our culture as a piece of secular law, without anybody really being able to say, why is it wrong?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let me get back into your mindset here. As your relationship with Ruby develops, what are you thinking? Are you growing fond of her? Are you getting turned on by her? I mean, what's going on in your head at that time?
A lot of different things were going on in my head, depending on the circumstances. One of the things that was going on is that I was thinking that I was having telepathic contacts with her when I was not down at the park. It was like she basically had established some kind of a link between us, and now she could enter my world and see things through my eyes and observe the human world almost as if she was a probe of some kind. It was a very bizarre feeling that I sometimes got. The other thing was that she intensified her physical efforts to get me aroused or to arouse herself, or to do both. One time I met a young woman that I really wanted to impress. I thought, I'll take her down to the park and she can go swimming with the dolphins. She loved the idea. She was so hot for it. So we get down there, and the dolphin that they'll let me take her swimming with is Ruby. And when this young woman gets in the water with Ruby, Ruby swims up to her, stares deep into her eyes, lifts her head out of the water, and mashes her snout into the side of the young woman's face. It was not a good scene.
Holy Moses. Wow.
No. The dolphin was jealous.
Yeah, sure. So was the
proceeded. Yeah?
Was the woman hurt? Was she injured? I mean, what happened?
No, she wasn't injured. I threw myself into the water and grabbed the dolphin. I've often thought about that gesture. I think most people would have grabbed the woman, but then who would be restraining the dolphin? I grabbed the dolphin and basically held on to her while the young woman got out of the pool, and the dolphin began rubbing off against me. So there I was in the water with this horny dolphin, on the shore, this poor young woman that I was trying so hard to impress, and had totally blown it because the dolphin figured out who she was and got jealous.
So Ruby said, I'm going to take care of that bitch, right? Like,
yes, in so many words.
That's wild stuff. Okay, all right. So you did not get lucky with your human companion that night. I'm assuming, right? I didn't
ever get lucky with her, as it turned out. But
all right. So
yeah.
I'm going to ask you a really explicit question now. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So here you are. You're in the water with Ruby. What was it like when you got an erection with her? Right. I'm sure you had an erection. What was that like for you? And what crossed your mind when that happened?
What crossed my mind, I was feeling actually rather detached at the time. And what crossed my mind was that there was nobody else around. This happened after I had known her 6 months. I tried for the first time. And it just crossed my mind that we could have sex, because she was obviously, going through all these courtship behaviors with me.
Right.
And it just didn't work out at that time. It was very cold that day. I felt like we were under observation. You know how it is.
Right.
Especially when you're dealing with somewhat different anatomy. I wasn't able to consummate the act the first time that we tried.
Because you have to navigate like you're right, a whole different set of equipment, for lack of a better term.
Well, also, I can't do it like dolphins do it. When a male dolphin wants to mate, he turns upside down under the female, and they mate belly to belly, but the female is on top, and she's upright.
Right.
And he's upside down under her. Now, obviously, I'm not athletic enough to do that.
Right.
So we had to work out a different way of making love that was sort of innovative.
Can you explain? Can you go a little bit further about what that entailed? I mean, how did you figure that out?
Experimentation.
Okay. All right.
Trying several things that didn't work. This is this. You have to excuse me, Robert. Is this for a podcast or are we on the radio?
We're on the radio. This is live, and we'll be a podcast.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Just thanks for letting me know.
Sure. So eventually you figure it out. I mean, she was obviously patient, right? She hung in there to see how you guys can do this, right?
She was very patient. She also had to escape from the confines of a pen where there was a male dolphin with her. These were the last two. By the time we finally got around to being comfortable with each other enough to be able to make love, the park was just about to close. It was literally days away from closing, and she and this other male dolphin were the last two dolphins left there out of about 10 that had been there previously. And he didn't want me around. There was no way I was getting in the water with him. He made that absolutely clear. So she actually escaped from that pen by squeezing between a very narrow space between two slats where he wouldn't follow her.
Uh-huh.
And she escaped from that pen into another pen where we had privacy. And then I got in the water with her, and we were able to, as I say, experiment and court and really, it was. I don't know. Does the term sacred play mean anything to you?
Sure, absolutely. I'm from
Yeah.
California, so it means a lot on some level.
All right.
Yeah.
That's very much what it was like.
Okay, here you are. You're now having a sexually intimate, and I'm assuming you're having a loving relationship with Ruby, right?
It was very loving towards the end. It was very tender. Her courtship became much less physical, much less violent, and much more erotic and sensual. I described in the piece that was on the 3 News from New Zealand about how she would open her jaws and run her teeth very lightly up and down my arms and legs. And that was a remarkable sensation. I mean, these creatures, when you're in the water with a dolphin, Robert, it has all the power. It can do anything it wants with you.
Right.
The dolphin had been unhappy with me. If I had been doing something that displeased her, she could have knocked me out of the pen with her flukes. She could have rammed me. She could have, at one point, in fact, she did push me to the bottom of the pen. But not because I was doing something she didn't like, because I wasn't doing something that she wanted me to do.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you're right. You're absolutely right. I mean, dolphins are one of the few creatures of the sea that can actually kill a shark. So you're absolutely right about that. So I guess what you're sharing with us is that Ruby was deeply consensual with everything that was taking place.
If it hadn't been consensual, it would have been impossible.
All right.
More than consensual. She was the instigator in this relationship, and she maintained this relationship over months of time when I was trying to discourage her.
Uh-huh.
And furthermore, she modified her behavior from behavior that was typical of dolphin courtship to behavior that was much more suitable to human beings. And this is not the first time dolphins in captivity have done this either. Read some of John Lilly's work where Margaret Howe is talking about her relationship with Peter. Peter Dolphin did the same thing.
Uh-huh.
He was tricky and clever about it. But I don't know. Maybe there's this pattern where the dolphins are trying to communicate with us, but they're just trying to communicate with us in a way that we find, morally. It would be like something out of a Douglas Adams story,
Absolutely.
We want the dolphins to speak, and the dolphins want us to have sex so that we can understand each other.
Yeah, it's
never the twain shall meet,
Yeah, that's funny stuff, actually. Okay, I'm going to ask you kind of a graphic question, or at least a frank question. Can you talk about the sensation of being with a dolphin? What was that like?
It was like being with the ocean in an incarnate form. She was an enormously powerful animal, but that power was all under her control. It was subdued. It was played out on human scale.
Right, something that you could actually handle. She was very sensitive to what you could handle.
Exactly. And just playful and resourceful. And I will point out, too, that dolphins have some aspects of their erotic lives that humans really can't duplicate because we don't have their echolocation.
Uh-huh.
But a dolphin's echolocation can create a physical sensation in your skin, on your skin, in your tissues. And they can use this in foreplay.
Uh-huh.
And
so,
that was part of the experience.
So I mean, you're probably feeling and experiencing sensations that are very different than many humans would in the normal course of, human to human sex.
Wasn't like making love in a hot tub. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I was just extraordinarily aware of the dolphin, and she was aware of me, and it seemed like we were just of one mind, if I can express it that way.
Yeah.
It seemed like I understood her, what she wanted, and she understood what I wanted. And, as much as with any human partner, we were lovers. I don't know how else to put it.
So one of the things that I experienced with dolphins in the brief amount of time that I did swim with them was that when I actually left, like, their environment, went back into my environment, I mean, I felt different. I mean, there was something about my experience with them that changed something about me energetically. People responded to me differently. I actually moved through the world a lot more gracefully. The one or two times that I swam with dolphins, it was, very cool experience on the backside, in as much as it was during the act of it. What was it like for you after you would have your experience with Ruby? How did you feel, and what was the world like for you when you left the pool and went back into the terrestrial existence?
Before I left the pool, I want to tell you about something that happened. After we actually finished physically making love, I was hanging on to the wire fencing along the edge of the pool. The dolphin swam up to me. She laid her snout on my shoulder. She embraced me with her flippers, and we just stared into each other's eyes for about a minute, just hugging each other like that. It was in a sense, it was more touching than the actual physical act of the sex was.
Right.
Because it was just some kind of very deep sharing of an acknowledgement that we had both crossed some kind of a line. I think she understood that I had crossed a line in accommodating her wishes.
Right.
And I think that I felt that maybe she had crossed a line in, mating with a human. I mean, I don't know what dolphins think of that.
Right, because she had to go back to that other pen where that male dolphin was, right, and deal with him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. She didn't seem to have any problems dealing with him. She was a very dominant female.
I'd say, yeah. I mean, she's very, very, very forward. So you leave the pool after you have this experience. I mean, what's going through your head?
Well, what was going through my head was that I had a really astonishing, possibly unique experience, and that there was no way on earth I was going to tell anybody about it. I just knew that at the time I didn't feel like most people would be very accepting of it, but at the same time I had been profoundly and deeply touched emotionally by the experience. It's hard to put into words, actually.
Did you have any kind of guilt or any sense of self-recrimination, like I shouldn't have done that? Was there any morality creeping into your experience?
No, but what was creeping into my experience was a desire for normalcy. I really wanted to try to get something going with a woman. I wanted to see if I could handle a relationship in normal terms. I was I had let myself become flipped out by the relationship with the dolphin, and not just the sexual aspects of it, but the other emotional and the cognitive aspects of it, because the dolphin was also playing some fairly sophisticated games with me when I was around her.
Can you talk about those? What was she doing?
Well, in one case, I was trying to get her to modify her sound, the sound that she was making, and say her name, say something that sounded like Ruby. And about halfway through this process, I had gotten her to modify it, and suddenly she stopped, and she somehow managed to turn the tables on me and get me to start imitating her. And she finally led me back around to making a sound that she had been making in the beginning. She played a big trick on me, in other words.
That's fascinating. She turned the tables on you. So this was kind of her way of, again, reestablishing kind of maybe a little bit of dominance or control, or in a playful fashion?
I don't think it was so much dominance or control. I think she had a serious interest in investigating humans. I think she may have been the equivalent of a dolphin scientist.
Interesting. Absolutely fascinating. So, okay, so now how many times would you say that you were in the pool and, actually sexual with Ruby?
Well, we were only successful once.
One time. Okay.
Yeah.
One time. And but you're from the time you met her through what we would call the courtship to the consummation of your connection with her, that lasted about 9 months? Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then, and based on what I was able to read about from your story, you moved away and did something different. Is that true? Is that what happened?
Well, here's what happened. As I said, the amusement park had been sold for property and was closing down, and the dolphins had all been sold. And she and this other dolphin were sold to an oceanarium in Mississippi. I had made plans to go away to the Evergreen State College for a year in Washington State because I wanted a better film program, which I thought I could get out there. And I thought, well, after a year, I'll come back and I'll look her up, see how she's doing.
Right.
And because I felt great tenderness and affection toward her.
Sure.
And after I had been out in Washington State for several months, I had this very piercing kind of nightmare, the kind where where you wake up and you can't breathe.
Yeah.
And in the nightmare, I was seeing dolphins dying under very specific conditions in a certain type of environment, like a cellar or a vault.
Uh-huh.
And there were many details about the scene that I noticed, and I was trying to get the dolphins out of there, and I couldn't do it by myself.
Uh-huh.
And when I came back to Florida at the end of the year at Evergreen, I learned to my horror that Ruby had died in captivity.
Uh-huh.
And I resolved to go to the oceanarium where she was and just try to find out what had happened to her. When I got there, or actually sometime after I got there, I realized that there was this high degree of congruence between the images in my dream and the actual physical layout of the oceanarium where she was.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like somehow she somehow managed to reach out to me and contact me in some kind of an attempt to try to get me to come and help her or get her out of there, because
right.
She had been separated from the male dolphin and put in a pen by herself. And it appears, although this is scientifically controversial, it appears to me that she basically committed suicide.
Huh. Wow, that's a very heavy experience. Were you able to corroborate that from the people at the Oceanarium, or is this just something that you sort of have pieced together yourself?
No. What her trainer told me is that once he separated her from this male dolphin that she'd been kind of pair bonded with,
right.
He said she stopped eating and she went downhill. He called in a vet. The vet gave her some vitamins. She seemed to perk up. And then he said, one morning I just came out and found her dead on the bottom of the tank. Now, the thing about dolphins, here Rick O'Barry, the dolphin trainer from Flipper, who now works with the situation to end over the dolphin slaughter over Japan. Rick agrees with me that dolphins can commit suicide. And the reason why they can is, Robert, their breathing is voluntary. The dolphins has to think about every breath it takes, every inhalation, every exhalation. And if it goes unconscious, it stops breathing. So if a dolphin holds its breath until it goes unconscious, technically it doesn't drown, it suffocates. But it will die unless there's another dolphin around to lift it back up to the surface and arouse it.
Wow.
So that's what apparently happened to her. And the dream, in retrospect, seems like a warning that I ignored for various reasons, and paid the price for that.
So I'm sure that you experienced a fair amount of grief around this, because this was, a very special experience in your life. I mean, it's very unusual, and obviously you were touched by it. And I mean, how did you feel after you found out she passed away?
I was chronically depressed for several years afterwards. It took me a long time to work through that grief because I really didn't get any counseling or anything for it right away. I just didn't feel that any counselors would be particularly sympathetic or understanding of my situation.
Yeah, who could go there with you on something like that? Right? I mean, that'd be pretty tricky.
Well, these days there's a whole industry of people who do counseling for people who lose animal companions.
Right.
But let's face it, most animal companions aren't quite as tight as I was with that dolphin.
Right.
So I don't know, even these days, I have been helped a great deal by counseling, not only with this, but with other problems in my life. So to all the people out there who tell me I need counseling, been there, done that, own the T-shirt.
What's it been like for you in terms of the realm of public opinion? I mean, have you been called a pervert, or have people treated you with scorn? I mean, I'm pretty non-judgmental about this because I'm interested in what your experience was. But I'm sure there are other people who may not be, as open as maybe I am or my audience would be. What's some of the feedback you've gotten that could be considered negative around this?
Well, I think the most frequently applied epithet is sick. People are comparing me to a child molester, which I'm not. I'm the victim of childhood sexual abuse. Thank you very much. They're saying that I'm a rapist, which is just so untrue.
Right.
It seems that people have a very narrow sort of idea of what kind of a relationship you can actually have with a non-human partner, especially a non-human partner that is as intelligent and as sensitive as a dolphin. I think the worst abuse I've suffered so far was on Bubba the Love Sponge last week, when I think it was Bubba's little cohort there, Manson, called me a sick son of a bitch, and that inspired me to hang up on him. And apparently that's not the way it's supposed to happen. Apparently Bubba was supposed to hang up on me. So, but after that, my sales shot up. I mean, seriously, they shot up like 500% overnight. So somebody must have been listening.
Now, look, I have some bias here, Malcolm, and the reason I have you on the show is because, frankly, it's a dolphin, and I think dolphins are really interesting, and I know for a fact that male dolphins, they'll have erections and they'll rub up against human women all the time, and these are sexually playful, exploratory, mammals, and very, very bright, very intelligent. if you go back, if you get into kind of the esoteric sort of space around it, the dolphins, theoretically were, along with the whales, the cetaceans were the first beings on this planet, and they were land animals, and if you get into, the Pleiades and the Nomos and the Dogon, the dolphin is a very important, being and source for them in their cosmology. Same as in Australia with the Aboriginal people. I mean, the dolphin is a very significant entity on life in this earth. Now, if you had sex with, say, I don't know, an armadillo, I mean, quite frankly, I wouldn't have you on my show, I mean, so I have a bias around this, and maybe it's a non-judgmental bias other people would find, strange or whatever. Not that I want to go out and, and hook up with a dolphin. That's not why I don't have the bias. I just think it's fascinating. So you have had some obviously negative exposure on this. And how do you deal with that? Do you just let it water roll right off your back, so to speak?
Well, at this point, I'm laughing off to the bank. Up to this point, the only thing that has really had an impact on me was right after, on the same afternoon after I'd been in on the SpongeBob the SquarePants show. I got a denial of service attack on both my cell phone and my landline at the same time, and that went on for an hour. I couldn't call out on either line because somebody from a blocked number was calling in on both lines. So I ended up changing one of the numbers, and the attack stopped after about an hour. But that was annoying,
Yeah.
That was about the worst manifestation of, I guess, anti-zoophile bias. Aside from the fact that I lost a major client for my photography, that happened too. I'd had a gig with a magazine here, and for about 5 years I've been shooting and writing stories for them. And after they heard my appearance on Bubba the Love Sponge, they told me my services were no longer required because I reflected badly on them and their advertisers.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, yeah. How are they going to, yeah. I don't know. I don't see the connection, really, but whatever.
Well, apparently they'd received some complaints from readers who were familiar with my work and figured out that maybe the Malcolm Brenner in the magazine was the same Malcolm Brenner as the one on Bubba the Love Sponge.
I see. What's your relationship like with women, Malcolm? Have you had okay relationships with terrestrial women? Are you currently in one?
Terrestrial women. No, currently I'm single, but I've been married twice. I was married to my first wife for 12 years, have a grown daughter with her, and I was married to my second wife for 6 years, and I was the stepfather to her 2 children.
And did they know about Ruby?
She did. Both of my ex-wives did, yeah.
And how did they respond to that?
They didn't seem to be an issue for either one of them. They were both rather open-minded people in that respect, and I'm just trying to put something into words, but the thought escaped me. It was not an issue for them, and that's about all I can say.
Okay. Well, I mean, obviously you were with them for an extended period of time, and I guess, I mean, if you ever really wanted to have a litmus, right, to see, because I think all men have their litmuses about, and women have them too, and it's not just men or women, but it's like,
right.
If you can go over this line, then you're okay, right? You've like pre-qualified yourself, and you can hang with me. For me, it's like, go to my website, read my website. If you like my website, you'll basically like me, right?
Yeah.
And I guess for you, you're really kind of, you've got a pretty, I wouldn't say rigid litmus, but it's a pretty clear line. It's like, hey, if you can get behind my story, and embrace me, well, then you're really, you're in pretty much.
Yeah, you're an open-minded woman, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I may even have a date going this weekend. I don't know. That's a phone call I'm going to make when I get off the line with you.
Okay. All right. Let's
a
see.
date with a woman, I should add.
A date with a woman. Oh, that's good. That's encouraging.
Just to clarify things, yeah.
Okay, so here's one other thing I wanted to ask you, okay?
Yeah.
Recently in the press, there have been a number of stories that authors have either fabricated the work. Carlos Castaneda, it's pretty common knowledge that Castaneda embellished, a great deal of his work. James Frey, under the guidance of his publisher, said, make this nonfiction so you can sell more copies, because it's kind of hard for us to sell this as a novel. I'm just going to ask you straight up. I mean, this is a true story. This is not something that you've created to sell books, right? And this is your life that you've fictionalized.
Well, I've got photographs in illustrating the novel of me in the water with the dolphin, of the park and the things like that. And I think this is probably the first time a novel has ever been illustrated with photographs, but we'll just let that go by the wayside.
Okay.
I think that my work trying to get this published goes back to 1974, when I got an excerpt from this published in a book called Mind in the Waters, that used to be very famous in the marine mammal anti-whaling scene. And I've been pushing this story for a long time, and it's not something I made up. I can't make up stuff that is as weird as the stuff that actually happens to me.
Is the pro dolphin or the Save the Dolphin community, do they embrace you, or do they know what to do with you, or what's your relationship like with those folks?
I don't think they really know what to do with me. Some of them I'm on good terms with some scientists that work with dolphins. One of them said, you've had a very intense relationship with them. And others, I think, have spoken out against my work. I don't think they've read it. It's probably the most controversial book that nobody has read.
Right. Yeah. Well, if people wanted to get a copy of your book, Malcolm, how would they do that? They go to your website or Amazon?
They can order from my website, which is wetgoddess.net. They can go to Amazon. They can go to eBay, or they can get an ebook from Smashwords.
Okay. And it's wetgoddess.net. That's your website.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. One of the things, we've only got a few minutes left, but one of the things I wanted to ask you, and if this ever crossed your mind, I mean, you mentioned that you were a victim of sexual abuse as a child.
Yeah.
Did you, at any point in time, get a sense that perhaps what Ruby was attempting to do, besides experience pleasure with you, was to somehow perhaps heal you of your memory of being sexually abused?
I don't think so, because at that time I didn't have the complete memory of it.
So that came later. That memory surfaced later in your life.
Yes, it did. And that's another story, really, and a book that I'm working on right now called Growing Up in the Orgone Box, which I hope to have done in a few months. Was she trying to heal me? I honestly don't know. There were so many things about dolphins that we don't know. And, what are we doing with them? We're treating them very badly. We're locking them up. We're making them perform for us. Right. Or in places like Tahiti, we're actually slaughtering them because they're in the way and because we can. And right. I can't, I'm not a scientist. I don't have the numbers. I don't have the facts and figures to nail down the question of dolphin intelligence and dolphin cognition. But I have the story, and damned if I'm not going to tell it, because I think it's a remarkable story, and I think it tells us a lot about what it means to be human as well as what it means to be a dolphin.
So has anybody approached you to do a film about this?
One guy did approach me last year, immediately after I issued a press release about it when I was first getting the novel out. He immediately realized that he'd made a mistake and withdrew the offer. But I will say that I do have a copy of my novel right now at a major New York publishing house, and they are very interested in it and are looking it over. So it may be that this could go big time. Well,
you know, if at the very least it brings some awareness to what's happening with dolphins, I think that would be a good thing. And
well, that was my whole intention.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling people I didn't write this book for zoophiles. I wrote it for dolphins.
Right.
And I wrote it trying to show people an aspect of dolphins that they won't see at SeaWorld, and they're not going to see, watching reruns of Flipper. Dolphins are real characters, and they have real feelings and real needs, and we need to start understanding that and respecting it and treating them that way.
I think it's really interesting that, at least in terms of kind of my awareness with your book and perhaps other people's awareness, is that it kind of emerged at the same time as this movie Dolphin Tale came out.
Yeah, I didn't have a thing to do with that. It was all David Farrier, this guy from 3 News in New Zealand, just happened to release a videotape of me that I had sent him over a year ago.
Uh-huh.
And he really couldn't explain why. He'd had some technical problems transferring the tape from DVD to his system over there, but he really couldn't explain why it took him a year to use the material. So it just came out coincidentally. I'm sure Dolphin Tale is a fine movie. I'm looking forward to going to see it myself sometime soon.
Well, Malcolm, this has been absolutely fascinating and highly unusual. And I want to thank you for coming on the show. And,
okay, Robert.
And I wish you the best in terms of sharing the message of what's happening with the dolphins and oceans in general on the planet. I think it's a worthy story. And I certainly wish you all the best in terms of dealing with what you're going to have to deal with moving forward with your story. Because it's not everybody is going to be, warm and fuzzy or open. And I'm sure that you already understand that.
Yes, I do.
All right.
But thanks for your concern, Robert, and thanks for having me on your show.
Okay, and when you have your next book out, which sounds intriguing, we'll have you back on. Okay, Malcolm?
I will do that.
All right, take care. Thank you.
So on.
Wow. I mean, look, I refrain from having, about a dozen puns, bad puns, kind of rise to the surface while he was on. And I did my very best to really understand what his experience was like. Look, I'm not sure I'd have sex with a dolphin, but I understand that, that this is the dolphins are very different. They're very different. And I could probably understand why, maybe at a certain point in his life, that he would want to experience that. And actually, in a weird way, it takes a lot of courage to be able to talk about it, write about it. So that was Malcolm J. Brenner, author of Wet Goddess. And that brings us to the end of our show. We have reached the final moments of the Friday FARcast. And how far was it today? Am I right? We went from abductions, missing time, out-of-body experiences at the age of 4, being taken up into the sky under a mothership and shown the future of humanity and our only chance passing through the eye of a needle, all the way across the world to Florida, where a man recounts his sexual, intimate relationship with a dolphin. It doesn't get much further out than that, does it? And that's the Friday FARcast. We take you out there. Next week, I should have Louise Harrison and Beatle Bob on the show. We'll be talking about the life of George Harrison. And there's an upcoming documentary on George Harrison. It's going to be airing on HBO. Looks very interesting. It will also be the anniversary of John Lennon's birthday, which happens on 10/9. So Monday, I'll be talking about Occupation Wall Street, and I'll have some audio verite for you from that event. This is Robert Phoenix. You've been listening to the Friday FARcast. I want to thank you. I want to thank Malcolm J. Brenner. I want to thank Robert Bruce for being on the show. I want to thank everybody in the chat room. Have an enlightened and far out and freaky frickin' weekend. I'll see you on Monday.
We are living in a computer programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.